The first sound was metal snapping, sharp, ugly, completely out of place in a neighborhood where the loudest thing was usually sprinklers turning on at dawn, and that's how I knew, even before my phone started buzzing, that something had gone very wrong. See, nothing good ever happens at 6:42 in the morning when you're 8,000 miles away in a dusty tent and your sister is back home alone. My name is Alex Rivera, and up until that week I honestly thought inheriting my grandmother's house was the one piece of luck life had finally thrown my way. Turns out, it was just the opening scene of the most insane, exhausting. It started with a pair of bolt cutters, and a woman who thought by now, I didn't hear the bolt cutters myself. I was on deployment, half asleep, boots still on, phone on silent. What woke me was my sister Lena's name lighting up the screen, 6 missed calls in a row, then a text that no punctuation, no explanation. I called her back immediately, heart already racing, and the first thing I heard wasn't her voice. It was that sound, clank, leak Lena, and she whispered, she's doing it, at HOA lady, the one I told you about, she's cutting the chain on your truck. Alex, she has a tow truck with her. That's when the knot formed in my stomach, the kind that don't go away, the kind that tells you you're up because the truck she was cutting into, wasn't just it was feed. Let me rewind 3 months earlier, my grandmother Rosa passed away. She raised me and Lena after our parents died in a wreck when I was 12, so that little beige house on Cypress Ridge Drive wasn't just a property, it was home, it was Sunday breakfasts, it was her humming old songs while frying tortillas, it was everything steady and a laugh. That how when she left it to me, I figured either rent it out while I was deployed, build some equity, keep it in the family, simple plan. The neighborhood was called Briarwood, picture Purandana. The president's name was Marilyn Holt, mid-50s, her husband, Dennis, sat on the CID 2 weeks into my deployment. I got the first EMI violation notice, unauthorized commercial vehicle. My Jeep was parked in my grandmother's driveway, same place it had been for years, but apparently now it was an Egisori. What Marilyn didn't know, or maybe didn't care about, was that the Jeep wasn't just mine. I worked Joint Task Force, federal level, narcotics, organized crime, and that vehicle was loaded with equipment I legally cannot describe in detail, but let's just say Lena did, and she looked at me like I was wasting her time. Lena told me later. She said rules are rules, and if your brother can't comply, maybe the way Lena said it, quiet, tight, like she didn't want to because Lena don't get rattled easily. Sis a middle school teacher. She deals with chaos for about Marilyn. Marilyn had a way over the next week, the letters started as the warnings. Finis. Threats of liens. Always addressed to me, always delivered to Lena, always worded like legal documents even though half of it was nonsense. Lena checked the bylaws, the real ones, from when Grandma bought the house in the 80s. And guess what, government vehicles were exempt. Military, law enforcement, emergency, specifically protected. Marilyn had just made it up. That's when things started to feel personal. And not just to us. Lena started noticing patterns. The Marine down the block got cited for his motorcycle, the Navy wife across the street got fined for her garden decorations, the older vet couple on the corner got hit with noise complaints for their oxygen machine. It wasn't random. It was targeted. And the more Lena dug, the uglier it looked. But I was overseas. I couldn't just come home. I couldn't walk into that HOA office. All I could do was listen, and plan, and try not to lose my mind while someone was slowly circling my family like prey. Then Marilyn escalated. She hired a private security company, had them patrolling the street, photographing my Jeep, logging times, telling neighbors it was a safety risk. Lena called me one night, voice shaking. They're telling people you're dangerous, she said. That military equipment don't belong in residential areas, that it puts families at risk. MRS, turn across the street today, Alex, she wouldn't even look at me. That was the moment something hard settled in my chest. Because this wasn't about rules anymore. This was about power. Control. And getting rid of people who didn't fit her version of community. I contacted legal through my command. They took one look at the situation and went very quiet, then very serious. You understand, the JAG officer told me, if she touches that vehicle, it's not an HOA issue, it's a federal crime. I remember staring at the dirt floor of that tent thinking, there's no way she's that stupid, nobody is that stupid. Turns out, some people really are. Which brings us back to that morning. Lena whispering into her phone. The sound of metal snapping. Marilyn in a robe with bolt cutters. A tow truck idling like it was just another Tuesday errand. I could hear Marilyn's voice in the background, sharp and loud. It's abandoned property. I have authority. Lo avit. And the tow driver. God bless that man, he hesitated. Ma'am, he said, that's government marked. I'm not touching that. And she snapped, do you know who I am? I run this neighborhood. That sentence, right there, that was the moment everything changed. Because some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. And Marilyn Holt had just stepped straight into a world she didn't even know existed. Lena was still whispering, still filming, still shaking. Alex, what do I do? And all I could say was, don't intervene. Just keep recording. Because deep down, I knew. This wasn't going to end with a fine. This was going to end with handcuffs. And she had no idea what they just started. The thing people don't understand about silence is that it can be louder than screaming. After Marilyn tried to take the Jeep, after Lena recorded everything, after the tow truck peeled out like it had just seen a ghost, the street went quiet in a way that felt wrong, like the calm before a storm, like the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. Lena didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. I sat in that tent with my back against a crate, phone in my hand, replaying the footage over and over. Marilyn's bathrobe flapping in the morning breeze, her hair half done, her face twisted with that weird mix of entitlement and panic, the sound of the bolt cutters hitting concrete, her voice saying, I run this neighborhood. I forwarded everything through secure channels. Every clip. Every timestamp. Every angle. Within an hour, my supervisor called. It didn't yell. It didn't lecture. It just exhaled, slow, controlled, the way someone does when they realize a problem just got very big. Alex, he said, she didn't just cross a line, she sprinted over it. By noon their time, federal marshals were en route to Briarwood Pines. By evening, the gate at the front of the neighborhood was locked. Marilyn had changed the access codes. She had literally blocked federal agents from entering. That was when the file went from property interference to obstruction of federal investigation. Lena watched it all from the front window, hard in her throat, phone in hand like it was a lifeline. They're here, she whispered to me. Men in suits. They're trying to get in, she won't open the gate. I could hear Marilyn through the phone, shrill and defensive. This is private property. You have no jurisdiction here. One of the marshals replied calmly, professionally, the tone of someone who has arrested people much scarier than an HOA president. Ma'am, you are obstructing a federal investigation. Open the gate. And she laughed. Actually laughed. I didn't see it, but I could hear it, a brittle, dismissive sound. No, she said. This is my community. I closed my eyes when Lena told me that. Just leaned my head back and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Because in that moment, Marilyn Holt officially declared war on the United States government, and she didn't even know it. The gate came down an hour later. Literally. They cut it. Neighbors came out. People filmed. Kids stared. Dogs barked. Lena said it looked unreal, like watching a movie play out on her front lawn. Marilyn stood there, arms crossed, lips tight, Dennis behind her looking pale, and the marshals walked right past them. That's when the neighborhood shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But you could feel it. People started opening doors. Peeking out windows. Standing on porches. Mrs. Caldwell across the street, 78 years old, 2 sons served, she came out with her cane and just planted herself on the sidewalk. I don't know what you think you're doing, she told Marilyn, but you will not bully another military family on this street. And then Mrs. Jenkins, the retired firefighter, then the Gwynn family, and the Carters. By sunset, there were 15 people standing between Marilyn and that Jeep. A quiet wall. No shouting. No threats. Just presence. Lena called me, boy steady for the first time in days. They're not moving, Alex, she said. They brought chairs. I laughed, a short, breathless sound, half disbelief, half relief. Tell them thank you, I said. Every single one of them. That sold bib in the end. It wasn't it. It was the beginning. Because Marilyn didn't retreat, she escalated. The next morning, Lena's car had 2 flat tires. All 4, actually. Clean slashes. Precise. Someone had spray painted "Go back where you belong" across the windshield. Red paint. Dripping. Ugly. Lena stood in the driveway, staring at it, hands shaking. She called me, and I could hear her trying not to cry. They're not even hiding it anymore, she whispered. Alex, they hate us. That word, hate, it hit harder than any threat. Because you can reason with anger. You can fight greed. You can expose corruption. But hate is personal. He reported it. Immediately. Federal response this time. Within hours, unmarked cars were parked on the block. Not obvious. Not flashy. Just, there. Two joggers who jogged a little too slow. A guy walking a dog who never picked up the leash. Protection detail. Marilyn noticed. Oh, she noticed. And she lost her mind. She started filing complaints. About everything. Noise. Trespassing. Suspicious activity. Unregistered gatherings. Potential militia behavior. She called animal control on Mrs. Caldwell's emotional support dog. She called code enforcement about kids playing in the street. She even called the school district about Lena. That one hurt the most. Lena called me from her empty classroom, voice tight, controlled, trying to be professional. The principal asked me if I was involved in extremist activity, she said. He went very still. What? He said. He said some parents were concerned at having a sibling in the military, with federal equipment at home, might create safety issues for students, and I might bring danger into the community, and it reflected on her judgment. I could picture her standing there, hands clasped, trying not to show how furious she was. I told him my brother protects this country, she said quietly. And that I refused to apologize for that. That was the moment the story stopped being about a truck. And started being about identity. About who belonged. About who had power. And who didn't. The investigation moved fast after that. Faster than Marilyn expected. They pulled HOA records. Financials. Emails. Contracts. And that's when the rot started to show. Lena is meticulous. Always has been. She color codes her lesson plans. Labels everything. Keeps every receipt. So when the agents asked if she'd noticed anything odd, she pulled out a binder. A literal binder. Marilyn always insisted on handling the books, Lena said. I thought it was control issues, but, she flipped to a page. And there it was. Payments to a consulting company that didn't exist. Invoices with no descriptions. Transfers to an LLC registered to Dennis Holt. City Planning Board member. Her husband. I remember sitting on my bunk when Lena told me, staring at the wall. You're telling me, I said slowly, they've been stealing. Systematically, she replied. 4 years. The agent took one look and said a word I hadn't expected to hear connected to an HOA. RICO. Racketeering. Organized crime. He almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was surreal. This wasn't a mob movie. This was a woman with a clipboard and a Lexus. But the pattern fit. Intimidation. Fraud. Discrimination. Financial manipulation. Abuse of authority. And when you put it together, it was ugly. Really ugly. They weren't just harassing people. They were pushing them out. Targeting the elderly. The military. The ones who wouldn't fight back. Buying their homes cheap. Selling them to developers. And who was on the planning board approving new projects? Dennis. The more they dug, the worse it got. Emails. Texts. Voice recordings. One audio clip made my stomach turn. Dennis, in a closed meeting, saying, military families don't invest long-term. They retransient. They hurt property values. He sat there listening to it, fists clenched, jaw tight. Lena just whispered, they never wanted us here. That night, Marilyn showed up in the backyard. At 3:12 de la mañana Lena's motion camera caught her, hood up, carrying a trash bag, moving fast. She was burning papers. Right there, behind Grandma's old shed. The smell woke Lena up. She looked out her window and froze. Alex, sis destroying documents, she's on our property. He forwarded the footage. Again. The response this time was immediate. She was arrested at sunrise. But not for that. For something even dumber. She tried to bribe an agent. He still can't believe that. She walked up to one of the unmarked cars, tapped on the window, envelope in hand. This don't have to be a big thing, she said. We can make this go away. The agent didn't even take the envelope. He just smiled. And recorded. Dennis tried a different approach. He went on local radio. Claimed outside agitators were targeting successful community leaders. Said military presence destabilized neighborhoods. Said Lena was emotionally compromised. That one got him indicted. Public officials don't get to weaponize their office. That's called conspiracy. By then, the street was a circus. Media vans. Neighbors talking. Signs in windows. We support our vets. Community over control. Lena stood in the kitchen one night, staring at the sink, rubbing her temples. I just wanted to teach kids, she said softly. I didn't sign up for this. He told her, yeah, but you're good at it. She looked at me through the phone, confused. At fighting, I clarified. You're good at fighting, you just didn't know it yet. The recall petition hit 2 days later. 63% of residents signed. Marilyn was removed. Dennis resigned. But the investigation didn't stop. Because by then, it couldn't. They had too much. Financial crimes. Civil rights violations. Witness intimidation. And then, the final twist. Lena found a folder in Grandma's old filing cabinet, tucked behind property tax receipts. A letter from Maryland, dated years ago, recommending that Briarwood Pines discourage military residency due to instability. Lena just stared at it. She was planning this, she whispered. Before you ever inherited the house. That's when I knew. This wasn't a coincidence. This was design. And the woman who thought she ruled a neighborhood was about to learn what real authority looks like. Because some battles don't end with apologies. They end with court dates. And prison sentences. And reputations in ashes. And we were almost there. The thing about watching someone self-destruct, really watching it, is that it's never as satisfying as people think. There is no dramatic music, no slow motion, no perfect timing. It's messy. Awkward. A little sad. And deeply human. By the time I landed stateside, Briarwood Pines didn't even feel like the same neighborhood. The air was heavier. The smiles were cautious. People talked in clusters instead of behind curtains. And Marilyn Holt, the woman who once strutted through that community like a queen inspecting her kingdom, was sitting in a folding chair outside the community center with her hands in her lap, eyes hollow, waiting for federal agents to tell her what came next. Lena met me in the driveway. We didn't hug at first. We just stood there. Looking at each other. Like we were checking if the other one was real. Then she stepped forward and buried her face in my chest and I felt her shake, not crying, not sobbing, just releasing weeks of pressure she hadn't had time to feel. Welcome home, she whispered. Inside, the house still smelled like Grandma's coffee. Like cinnamon. Like safety. It almost felt wrong that something so peaceful had been the center of so much chaos. The community hearing was 2 days later. They packed the place. A standing room only. People from other neighborhoods, reporters, veterans in jackets with patches stitched on, teachers from Lena's school, families Marilyn had targeted years ago but never spoken up. Marilyn walked in late. Of course she did. With a blazer. Perfect hair. Chin. Dennis behind her, shoulders slumped, jaw tight, eyes darting. The contrast was almost painful. Lena sat beside me, hands folded, posture straight, teacher calm masking raw emotion. The federal prosecutor opened with facts. Dry. Clean. Precise. Fraud. Embezzlement. Civil rights violations. Conspiracy. Abstraction. Witness intimidation. Each charge landed like a brick. Then they played the footage. The bolt cutters. The gate being blocked. The attempted bribe. The backyard fire. The recording of Dennis saying military families didn't belong. You could hear people gasp. Murmur. Seethed in their seats. Marilyn's face changed as it went on. Not fair, not yet. First confusion. Then irritation. Then, realization. The slow dawning understanding that this wasn't an HOA dispute anymore. This was criminal court territory. When Lena was called up, the room went silent. She stood, walked to the podium, took a breath. And then she spoke. Not as a victim. Not as a sister. But as a citizen. For years, she said, boy steady, we were told to be quiet, to comply, to not make trouble, because the people in charge knew better. She looked directly at Marilyn. But authority without accountability is just bullying with paperwork. The room erupted. Applause. Shouts. Someone yelled amen. Marilyn flinched. For the first time, actually flinched. Then it was my turn. He didn't plan a speech. He just told the truth. About Grandma. About the house. About the truck. About the day Lena called me crying from her classroom. About sitting overseas knowing someone was tearing my family apart while I couldn't be there. I looked at Marilyn and said, you didn't just mess with my property, you messed with my family, and that's the kind of mistake people don't recover from. The arrest happened right there. No drama. No yelling. 2 agents stepped up, identified themselves, and read her rights. The sound of cuffs closing is quieter than you think. Almost gentle. Then he stood up like he might run, then thought better of it. They took him too. Lena exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. He put my hand on her shoulder. She squeezed it once. Hard. The sentencing came months later. Marilyn got 7 years. Dennis got 5. No early release. No deals. No favors. The judge said something that stuck with me. You used community as a weapon, he told her. And you will now live without it. The HOA was dissolved. Rebuilt. New leadership. New bylaws. Transparency. Protections. Term limits. Lena was elected president. She didn't want it. She took it anyway. Because some people don't seek power, they accept responsibility. The house stayed in the family. The street changed. People talk now. They check on each other. Kids play again. And every time I park that Jeep in the driveway, no one complains. Sometimes, Mrs. Caldwell brings cookies. Sometimes, Mr. Jenkins gives a nod. And sometimes, I catch Lena standing at the window, watching the street like she still don't quite trust the quiet. It is the part that might make people uncomfortable. Because it's not all clean. Not everyone apologized. Some neighbors pretended they supported us all along. Some stayed silent and still do. And that's the part one think about the most. Not Marilyn. Not Dennis. But the space in between. The weeks when no one said anything. When people saw what was happening and looked away. Because that's how people like her get power. Not just through cruelty. But through quiet. And that's why I'm telling this. Not because we won. Not because you lost. But because someone watching this right now is living next to a Marilyn. And wondering if they should speak up. And telling themselves it's not their problem. And hoping it won't be them next. So here's the question I leave you with. When does following rules become enabling abuse? When does staying quiet become taking sides? And if you were standing on that sidewalk, watching someone bully a family, would you step forward? Or close the blinds? Let me know in the comments. I really want to know what you think. Because communities don't fall apart all at once. They erode. Quietly. And they only heal when someone decides enough is enough. If you've ever dealt with HOA abuse, power-hungry neighbors, or watched someone get pushed around because they didn't fit, share your story. If you think Marilyn got what she deserved, say it. If you think the system failed before it worked, say that too. And if you believe that ordinary people can stop corruption when they stop being afraid, hit like, subscribe, and don't stay silent. Because silence is the only thing bullies need to win.